In this tournament atmosphere actually also works on casters, not just on players.
Yep. Let me get this set and we'll go. All right, quick intro for those not in the live stream. Okay, so we are hosting the Equilibrium Tournament. This is a 1 versus 1 tournament happening on September 30th. And you're probably going to see quite a few games coming out from both my channel and Heaven's channel, who is with me here, by the way. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Hey, Brink.
Fantastic. We are going to be posting alternating games to our channel. So if you want to see some of these, how they turned out, get a few highlights from the tournament, check out my channel and his channel. Links will be in the description, and we will have those posted for you guys. But for now, let's dive into this game. You want to introduce the players this time?
Sure. On the bottom left, we have Agrum, who is 1,200 rated, playing Blue Cybran, and his opponent is Armaster, 1,600 rated Dark Red Cybran. Looks like both of them are going for... No, actually not. We have Agrum, who is not prioritizing the Hydro and instead going for a T1 power generator build. And Armaster seems to be prioritizing the Hydro after just 2 mass extractors.
That seems to be a little foolish to me, though, because the Hydro is such a great return on your investment. It's kind of close to the cost of a T1 power generator and provides 5 times as much power. So it seems to me like there would be absolutely no reason not to rush that.
Bloodier probably is the player who has the most sort of renowned Syrtis build order, and this one also prioritizes the Hydro, so I'm inclined to agree. But I do see that there are lots of rocks on this map, and perhaps if Agrum plans on going for a high power generator build, he wants to save some storage capacity for this reclaim. So that could be what he's thinking.
Yes, something about the rank discrepancies. Typically, a 1600 rank will be a little bit better than a 1200, but that's not necessarily true in this tournament because these are the multiplayer rankings that are used globally for any of the matches hosted on FAF, whereas this is a 1 versus 1 game. And I know a lot of players who are incredibly good at 1 versus 1, not necessarily so much at team games, and vice versa. So we'll just have to see how all these play out. There's going to be a wide variety of players and skill levels in this tournament.
I do know something about both of these players. Agrum actually plays a lot of ladder, as far as I know. Like, I remember when I was climbing the ladder that I often played against him, and he's quite experienced at 1 versus 1. Armaster has been playing a lot of Equilibrium games, so he may have more knowledge about the mod itself than Agrum, and perhaps we're going to see him exploiting some of this knowledge.
That could be helpful. And yes, Agrum is 200 rank higher than Armaster in ladder rating. It's always important on Syrtis to try to shut down the expansions of your opponent. I do realize that there are some choke points here. There's 2 entrances to the main plateau or depression, whatever it might be, that you are building your bases in. And there's also 3 choke points through the center, one of which is guarded by civilians. However, this is a 10-kilometer map, and the distance is pretty great from one side to the other, so expanding is very difficult. If you're able to get units across, as both of these players have, you can see a Mantis down here for Armaster that I think, no, it's not killed off an engineer, but he is going to try to skirt and get a kill. Don't think he will. And then Agrum on the north side pushing a Mantis over this way. If you can get those units across, whether by walking or by transport, you can get a huge leg up on the competition. Very close there. 36 HP surviving on that Mantis.
As a general rule of thumb on Syrtis, you either want to prioritize the expansion that looks like your base but is on the diagonally opposite side of the map, or you want to prioritize the middle. doing both at the same time typically results in getting neither. And my personal advice would be to prioritize the expansion just like Agrum is doing, and at the same time trying to deny the expansion of the opponent. So Agrum actually has a very significant map control lead just from denying the engineer that went to the center expansion for Armaster.
Yes. One problem that I do see, though, is that Agrum does not have an air factory yet at all. And we've already got a T1 bomber out from Armaster, so that's going to give him a huge advantage, at least for the first few minutes of the game, because it's going to take some time to be able to respond to that from Agrum. Also, there's quite a significant amount of unit production on this side. There's the same amount of factories, but I think that these are running a little bit more uninhibited than Agrum's are. Production, maybe he's mass stalled to a greater degree. I can't actually select and look at the exact eco of these players, which is a bit of a bummer on this one, but we will watch and see how it
No,
goes.
actually you can, Brink, if you press Alt F2 and double click the faction of that player.
Alt F2, ah.
Just make sure not to accidentally give any commands, because that's going to spam is trying to cheat log.
No, I do absolutely understand. I did not know that the cheats menu is available in that way, even when cheats were not turned on.
Yeah, it actually is. Interesting, right?
Yeah, super useful.
So we are seeing that Armaster is actually starting to struggle with his power, and Agrum really has the better map control. There's also a fighter dealing with Armaster's bomber, so I'd say that Agrum is far ahead right now. Unless Armaster manages to take out the expansion at the bottom. But the ACU is there to deal with it.
Yes. What is the command to go back out to observers?
I didn't think that far ahead, Brink. Oops.
Oh no! Someone in chat save me. Surely there is someone who knows the answer to this. For now, I shall just swap between the two views.
I think there is a chat line command, but I don't know it by heart.
Try Army 9. No, the armies are the central civilians and whatnot. So Armaster definitely has a lot more units at his disposal, and he has been able to push in a Mantis to kill off the expansion. He got the engineer, and he is going to kill off some of those mass extractors. So very nice push from him. About the same going down for Agrum, though. He has moved in with a number of Mantis, definitely enough to survive the one or two that are up here. I do see an incoming power stall for Armaster, though.
Yeah, that's true. This
Might be a
power
little
stall.
issue.
This power stall has been ongoing for quite a while, and Armaster has only 2 engineers producing power, so would be a good move to stop making air, get some extra engineers, and spam power with at least 5 engineers, I'd say, since this is Syrtis. Like 3 is the absolute minimum, but that only works when you start power spamming from the very start.
This is usually where I fall apart in Syrtis, is I tend to underestimate the sheer volume of reclaim that is on this map. There is a huge amount. And I end up maybe 5-6 minutes into the game, I just outrun my power potential and end up in a really bad spot.
That and the map control issues. It is so easy to lose your expansion for good, and it's very difficult to recover from that.
Yes. Armaster is only dropping engineers up here, even though there are... Oh no, he does have a couple of Mantis on the transport, but he's not dropping them. It looks like he wasn't paying attention to where the troops had moved to.
Probably nervous because of the tournament. Taking a look at land unit count, it is relatively even. Armaster has a bit more, but Agrum went for a higher army mix, and perhaps depending on how the awareness of the 2 players comes into play, Agrum may have the upper hand because his mix requires less micro.
Commander under attack.
Someone is giving me chat options or selection options through the user interface.
Armaster is upgrading some mass extractors to T2, but the map control of Agrum is better. Some idle engineers for Agrum that could be reclaiming, and this would be a good way of addressing this mass stall, but it seems to be over now. I think it's notable how Agrum has units in different spots on the enemy side of the map, whereas Armaster is kind of struggling to keep up control in his portion of the map and not operating in enemy territory at all.
I got it!
You got it?
I got it!
How? Is it a console?
Huge thank you to Miss the Falls and Plasma Wolf. Good lord, that was messed up.
Okay, set focused army player -1. Is that it?
Yes, that is it. Make sure there's a space before the -1. Well, that was abysmal. So I'm assuming this is the gun upgrade. Armaster is getting Advanced Molecular Ripper, and
yeah,
it's
that's
already
the gun upgrade.
Pushing up on 40%. I do like the sheer amount of spam that Armaster has been able to pull off on not quite as many land factories as Agrum has. It kind of indicates a little bit better balanced eco overall, perhaps. Looks like we've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total now, as opposed to 5, 6, 7, 8 exactly the same for Agrum. So as long as the economies are balanced, things should be relatively even units wise moving forward. This gun commander is going to make a huge difference. Agrum does have the center though, so he is going to be able to get all of this extra reclaim, and as long as he can keep ahead on his power needs, that's going to put him way far ahead.
Agrum spends double the mass he actually has, so this reclaim in the center is going to be a huge relief. I think it would help Agrum a lot to just take all of the engineers and outright mouse button them to balance out his economy. But you can really tell how players are stressed in tournament conditions and typically perform not as well as in a game in which the outcome doesn't count as much.
Yes, it's amazing how much of a difference stress can make. It's kind of like that thing where when you're playing a game by yourself, you can always pull off these super unrealistic feats. And maybe you have a recorder running, maybe you don't, but a lot of times it all comes down to your word on whether or not you actually did it. And then, of course, when you try to show it to somebody or somebody watches you play the game, you just fall flat on your face. And at least the pressure is relatively uniformly distributed in a case like this. I do like the T2 land push. We've got rhinos on the field. I just hope that the numbers can get high enough quickly enough that the gun comm won't just totally negate that with overcharges. All of those T2 units are moving over to the side with the ACU, so that's a little bit worrisome.
Armaster absolutely has to finish this upgrade.
Otherwise, he is going to get wrecked.
Yeah, getting locked out of this upgrade now would be absolutely horrible. But I think he
is finishing at full speed.
Yeah, yes. With assistance even.
I like this Mantis push into the rear base. Armaster is going to lose a whole lot of engineers over this one. It would be nice to see these getting picked off before they finish the T2 mass extractor upgrade. But I don't think that will be the case. Looks like the priority is on those engineers. Bit of an odd placement for power generators, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. That's true.
I guess that's where he had the engineers, so he just had to go for it. So looking at the mass extractors, I would like to point out that there is a very large difference between these two players. Look at how many blue units there are, as opposed to the darker red units. And look at how many T2 mass extractors there are. We've got six T2 mass extractors on this side. There is one over here. That means that all of the extra mass has gone into units for this side. Armaster is pretty pinned down here. Do you think he can overcharge his way out of this one?
I'm not sure, actually. I do believe so, yeah. I think he can. That's true.
He got the T2 unit, and he is with the gun upgrade. Also, look at the edge build on these T1 point defense. I don't think that's going to work out very well. Pay attention to your terrain, guys.
We see a push at the bottom, but I think this one is... No, it may not fail. There's only one Rhino here, so... But...
There's a Rhino and there's a Stealth, so he may mess up with his micro and push something in too far. I don't know
possibly.
whether that will make a difference or not.
It looks like a draw to me down here, and the reclaim is of course going to be on Agrum's side, so... It's better if Armaster doesn't fight this.
It would look to me like Agrum has actually gotten more of his core reclaim than Armaster has. If I just had to guess looking at it. I don't want to zoom back into the player field quite yet to go take a look at the economy. I'll do that in just a minute, but it seems like he has a little bit of an advantage.
So we have 9,000 reclaim for both players, actually.
Oh, okay.
But
nicely done.
Armaster put it into mass extractor upgrades, while Agrum put it into T2 units and T1 units mainly.
I would be interested to see if he's going to push around the right-hand side now. Oh, that's nasty. We got a drop. Armaster is putting in, looks like 5 Mantis on the south side. He wasn't able to break through the front. Yeah, he wasn't able to break through the front, so he's going to come through the back door. It would be nice to see a good, strong push through the right, because once these units are down, there's not a whole lot of defenses down there.
I'd like to see the use of some T2 air. I think with Armaster's commitment to the gun ACU, he is necessarily risking it. And there won't be any tech on that ACU. And there aren't any high-tech engineers at the top either, so... I think a snipe would work out perfectly.
Perhaps. There is a lot of reclaim left on Armaster's doorstep here. That was a nice, strong push, but in the end, it did donate a lot of mass. It's a shame it didn't come a little bit sooner, because then it might have been able to kill off that ACU or at least stop the upgrade. But once that gun came into play, it was just a no-go. Oh, there's also a Medusa in that mix. 2 of them. So those will have a little bit higher damage potential. There are so many T2 units on this field right now. Lots of tanks coming out for Agrum. Would you recommend ever using the Cybern T2 tanks, or would you prefer to usually go for like a Loyalist rush?
I'd say that keeping the T2 stage relatively short is better, and going for T2 air or T3 land relatively fast. Not really because of the Siren T2 units themselves, which aren't bad, but rather because of the overall weakness of T2 compared to T3 in general in the current balance. But a mix of Rhinos and Medusas can actually deal a lot of damage, and at times even outperform the T2 mixes of other factions. So that's certainly not a bad mix at all. The stun on the Medusa paired with the Rhino is quite a strong combination.
Oh yes, especially versus other T2. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Medusas can't stun T3, right?
Yeah, I think so. They cannot stun T3, but they do stun T2 quite a long time, and that's just another reason why making Obsidians is not so great. They are very slow and extremely vulnerable to Medusa.
Yes. I like how both of these players are knocking out the symmetrical expansions at almost exactly the same time. It's actually kind of funny to watch. We've got a couple more T2 Mass Extractor upgrades online for Armaster, who is surely in a better economy position. There are some T2 upgrades going down in the back now. So there's 5 online for Agrum, but that is still pretty far behind. Looks like the 9 to 10 that Armaster has. And his T2 mexes are also spread across his expansions and around into the back of the map. So any one particular raid shouldn't be too bad should one get through or get dropped. There's that T2 air that you were looking for.
Yeah, and Agrum decided to go for T3 land, so that could be an interesting interaction. It's all going to come down to this one snipe on Agrum's ACU. I think Armaster is the type of player who goes for the ACU and not the power generators and HQs. So that's probably just one thing Agrum has to survive, and once he survived that, the T3 land is going to have full battlefield impact.
That's one thing I think players don't think about much. Unless you are like 90% sure that you can kill the ACU, especially in a 1 versus 1 situation, it is almost always better to snipe targets of value other than the commander.
Yeah.
The commander has a lot of health. A T2 power generator, on the other hand, only 2,000. 2 Corsairs in 1 pass can kill a T2 power generator if it's unshielded.
Plus, commanders can move and dodge, and typically
Yes.
people try to keep them safe. I think Armaster actually made a mistake by revealing the Corsair, and a reaction from Agrum is to be expected. He's already retreating his commander a little bit. He's got stealth on it, and it's no longer operating in the area where the units are, but he moved it closer to his base. So perhaps he's going to bring it into the base under the shield soon.
This is going to turn into a bit of a massacre because we now have a pretty substantial amount of T2 tanks on the field, and there's now 3 loyalists built as well. Agrum has continued to move up the tech tree, and I don't think he's even producing T1 units anymore other than Medusas. So this is about to turn very nasty for Armaster. I hope his T2 air move can help him some, but since we are seeing some mobile flak being built, I think Agrum might be ready for a push here.
I am secretly, or maybe not so secretly, rooting for Agrum because he's got the lower rank. Would be nice to see him move on in this tournament. Is it actually
lower
single?
rank but higher 1 versus 1 experience?
Oh, good point. Yeah, true. Is it actually a single elimination tournament, or what's the format they're using?
It is double elimination.
Oh, I see. So everybody
Yes,
gets
so
to
there
lose
is a
once
losers
and-
bracket.
Yeah, they can still stay in the tournament.
Rhinos are really good and really terrible for the same reason. They use a laser beam projectile similar to the Cerberus turret, so that means that they really don't miss that much. They can't be microed around, and unless there's a little bit of a targeting bug, they are going to hit the units that they're aiming at, and they have very high damage. However, if you're on rough terrain, since they have a flat projectile path, they will hit terrain more often. You're not really seeing that out here because while the terrain does change, it's flat enough on Syrtis. But if you were to see engagements over on one of these sections that have big changes and hills and things, the Rhinos would be put at a pretty severe disadvantage, even versus Mantis.
Yeah, it's especially because of the low signature of the Rhino and not so much of the weapon itself that these tend to shoot hill a lot.
Yes, very low to the ground. Corsairs moving up to the north. Not entirely sure what these are headed for. They
Maybe-
may actually be on a patrol.
I think so, yeah.
Yes,
so
they
far, Armaster has been using his Corsairs to try and halt the land pushes, so he's been using them defensively. I would have tried to keep the Corsairs hidden in the corner of the map, and as soon as I have critical mass, I'd go for the snipe. But perhaps Armaster is simply more risk-averse than that. But I do think that Agrum's T3 land is eventually going to kill Armaster if he's not careful.
Oh, yes. This Loyalist is already pushing through into one of the expansions where there are T2 mass extractors, and remember that a significant amount of power is built out here. Actually, I retract that statement because there's 3 T2 power generators in the back, so it's no longer a significant percentage. But there are some valuable things in this expansion, including build power. So this is about to turn a little bit weird, But Corsairs are going to be able to take out the Loyalists, so maybe the risk is reduced a little bit.
Already 2 kills on the top point defense. I think both of them are Rhino kills. So point defense, of course, performing extremely well against Rhino, because the Rhino, if it actually shoots at the point defense, is most likely going to hit the wall or even the ground in front of it.
Absolutely. Walls, the bane of the existence of every low-slung tank. Even Loyalists have some difficulty killing off wall sections, so it's not just that, but it does make a difference. Yet another drop. We got Hoplites, Mantis, and a Rhino in the back. Armaster is using that T2 Air Factory to build transports now, as well as gunships. But the shift in production from interceptors to combat air has lost him the air superiority. He still does have a few more interceptors, but the numbers are much closer now. And Agrum is building T3 anti-air as well as T2, so he's going to be able to lock down his positions pretty well.
Armaster is also producing bricks now, so this T3 initial advantage from Agrum is going to disappear eventually. Plus, the attack Agrum executed on the right side was more expensive and less fruitful than the attack at the top. So I believe that Armaster is gaining the upper hand slowly.
Armaster is at 110 income with 22,000 reclaim, and Agrum is only at 14,000 reclaim. Very far behind on that, as well as only having 71 mass per tick. So this is going to turn into a war of attrition, and at the current rate, it looks like Armaster is going to win it with the reclaim and eco advantage.
T3 drop simulator has started, and these are probably going to decide the game. So after a while, Syrtis just turns into a war of dropping and counter-dropping, and these can deny expansions and snipe power, and that's exactly what we see now.
This brave little T1 transport is going to get shot down by a Corsair. No! Even the weakest of the AA in the bunch is able to take down that poor thing. But the counter drop is going to make it. I like the brick shielding the transport from damage as it's being dropped. Another benefit of the real-time simulation of projectiles, you get interesting little interactions like that, not just, oh, this unit fits inside this transport, and then that transport takes damage unilaterally.
That's a nice TML from Agrum here, but unfortunately he's mass stalling too much to load it.
There is, oh, I see it on the front line. Did Equilibrium has 8 missiles still for the Cybern launcher. That's interesting.
The T3 mobile anti-air is doing quite a good job at taking out these Corsairs. So these turn into a mass donation. And I believe it's not impossible for Agrum to come back and actually even out the 6 again. But it's going to be difficult, especially if he doesn't reclaim a lot.
Very much so. He is reclaiming. He's 1,000 higher than last time I looked. And if he were able to just load that TAC launcher, there's no TMD in the opposing base, and he could get at least 3 T2 mass extractors plus a lot of build power with that launcher. So that would be a prime thing to prioritize.
There's no T3 engineer in the queue of Armaster's factory, so we probably won't see any attempt to make T3 power and get T3 air, or make an experimental.
Commander under attack.
Mantis have now broken into the base. There are loyalists that can defend against that, but they are out of place. And the radar is down as well, so now there's going to be no vision on what is happening in this side. They do have a trajectory though, but it looks like Armaster actually changed course with a couple of his units after the radar died. So he's going to lose this build power as well. Not a good situation at all. Bricks and Loyalists caught up in pathfinding hell over there on the right side. This is why you don't clump your T1. around your T3 and choke points. Anyway. Brave little Mantis pulling around the backside. I don't think they're actually going to be able to get any kills, and Loyalists are chasing them down pretty quickly, but they will do a little bit of damage. Finishing off the build power on that side, another Loyalist and a Rhino moving in to deal with that threat. And then still seeing some gunships from Armaster.
Jesus Christ. I have to mute myself for a second. Sorry, Brink. My roommates are trying out the new kitchen machine. I have to interrupt for that.
I'm wondering why he's still continually building gunships, though. Because he knows that there's flak in a lot of places on the map, and that he doesn't have air control. So it just seems like an odd choice to me. Thank goodness for veterancy. It might just let it live with the help of the gunship, but I don't think it's going to make it. Nope, gunship is not going to make a significant amount of damage, and Brick is going to go down. However, there's now a new flood of units coming in. The only hope that Agrum has, I think, is to be able to defend some of this and start the reclaim machine up again. But his ACU is now way out of place. He's got a brick, many T1 units moving in on it, and gunships at his back. So I don't know that he is going to be able to survive this one. It kind of depends on whether or not he has good overcharges. Gunships moving in. T3 anti-air trying to whittle down the HP on those. He did manage to overcharge the brick, so I think he will be fine.
Yeah, he is going to survive that one.
Yeah. Lose quite a substantial amount of health, but he'll be okay.
A little sad to see that Agrum does not have a T2 air yet. He could have tried to evac out with the T2 transport, but apparently he didn't have the time to get it yet.
Agrum is, or not Agrum, Armaster. Armaster is on 129 mass income, stalling 500 power at 37,000 reclaim, over double Agrum at 16,000 still. So his reclaim has pretty much stopped, and 1,800 power income on him. It's interesting to see how games play out, because let me get back here. In the early game, I think Agrum had a pretty good build order. He definitely had good aggression. He had a better map stance, and he was making things work to a certain degree. But overall, Armaster came back in the end and won the war of attrition. So, I don't know. It's probably Agrum did have better 1v1 experience, better map experience, but Armaster's overall better understanding of when to eco and when to build just gave him the win later in the game.
At the very start, it looked to me like Armaster was actually losing because he couldn't secure his own expansion. But Agrum just stopped raiding at some point, I suppose, and he managed to rebuild this expansion. And that's
Yes.
when things looked a lot better for Armaster.
I think some of it too might come down to mental fatigue, because something that I see a lot in newer players or lower ranked players, myself included in that one, they do really well in the very early game, but then rapidly run out of APM and mental capacity, for lack of a better word. Like, you just get tired and let things slip. And I've lost many a game to that, where I open up strong, get them back in a corner, get everything taken care of, and then I just basically get lazy and don't follow through, and then the other person comes back and wins it. And I don't know, I'm sure some of it has to do with overall game experience, because Armaster recovered very well, but I think some of it might have to do with that, where Agrum did everything it was supposed to do in the beginning of the game, and then versus someone of his own rank or lower than his, the other person probably would have just given up and he would have won it anyway. But he just didn't follow through with his lead.
We actually saw very risk-averse playstyles from both players, but it was the ecoing that decided it for Armaster, I suppose.
4 bricks together. 3 bricks in a Loyalist is a pretty strong force. It's amazing how many T1 units those can chew through. If that Loyalist were able to vet just a little bit more, he might survive better. But looks like he'll make it out anyway.
But that's
One
cheeky.
thing to remember about... Say what?
That's cheeky little air superiority, Artie, down there at the bottom left.
Oh, these two? Oh.
Yeah.
He is just killing off the interceptors as they land. That's amazing. One thing to remember about Equilibrium mod, the regen values are quite substantially higher than in other versions of the game because they substitute straight up HP gain for greater regen over time. So the Loyalist is able to very quickly regenerate a lot of the health that he had. It is going to die because he overextended. But notice that he went from sub 100 to 300 to 400 HP in just a matter of seconds. Very, very overpowered regen, especially on Cybern. Agrum should be able to get at least a double with an overcharge here, as long as he can make it happen, but it looks like he had to back up a little bit. He doesn't have the gun upgrade. He has T2 and Stealth, so that brick is going to be able to range him quite handily. Oh, look at the Trebuchet. Just hammering that base from range.
Hurting my Aeon heart.
Put that good AoE to use. And now the bricks are just not moving anymore. Looks like Agrum is focusing his APM on his ACU. But now that he's losing chunks out of the back of his base, I think we can officially call this over.
Yeah, it is. I think Agrum had a realistic chance at winning this one with his raid and I guess some air. He should have gotten a little more air to shoot down the Corsairs and get a snipe on his own.
There might be an ACU kill here. Nope.
Not yet.
Need a snipe.
Quite tanky
Just
for a
need
Siren
a
ACU.
strap bomber. T3R is online for Armaster, so he will be able to pull that off.
Interestingly, in Equilibrium, the ACU gun range is actually higher compared to normal FAF.
Really? Does the Aurora still outrange it?
No, it does not actually. They have the same range.
That's very weird. Very weird. Hopefully that change doesn't make it into FAF as well. That would
Yeah,
take
hope
away
not.
one of the great faction advantages that Aeon has.
And that's one thing I really dislike about Equilibrium. I think in general, Equilibrium has some very interesting ideas. Some of it are better than regular FAF balance, others are worse, and I guess when you want to decide whether you like the mod, you of course have to decide for the entire package, but introducing some things from Equilibrium into FAF has actually happened in the past, and some of the changes were really good.
I think that needs to be handled very carefully, though, especially with things like the veterancy change that just got put in that came from Equilibrium originally.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's
The veterancy mod, or the veterancy change, I don't think at all was necessary.
same here
And
actually.
And it kind of scares me a little bit because that veterancy change is paired in Equilibrium, like I was saying, with the reduced HP gain and higher regen values. And I have mentioned in the past that I think the higher regen is actually more valuable. Looks like we're going to have a death by Wagner up here. It's going to be what calls it. And I've played a game in Equilibrium before where the same tank was able to engage multiple times and kill many, many times its own mass because the regen was so high. And I just don't think that's a very good way to handle veterancy overall. And I'm very worried that that aspect is going to follow because we already had HP gain reductions and now we've had the veterancy system change to what Equilibrium uses. I don't want to see the other aspects move in as well.
Some things that came from Equilibrium, for example, automatic overcharge, I think were good additions to FAF, but making a FAF balance more like Equilibrium is something I wouldn't want to generalize.
Definitely
see
not.
applied in a generalized way. Yeah.
Definitely not.